Right, meanwhile, President Cyril Ramaphosa says there's no tension between cabinet members after Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa requested for more powers. He's long been asking for this to better execute his duties. Ramaphosa has confirmed that he's in talks with Ramokgopa about the issue. Let's discuss this further with the energy expert Mthunzi Luthuli. Mthunzi, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. The ANC's National Working Committee saying that this question of powers is as good as done. And there is a link that is being created between the minister having more powers and this accelerating efforts to end the national power crisis. Is there a relationship there whatsoever? Do you think there are things that he can do better and quicker if he's given full powers of a minister?
Good evening, Tawa, and good evening to the viewers. Look, certainly, but first I think what we need to do is let's look at what the new Minister of Electricity is expected to do. Okay? According to my understanding, he's supposed to implement the Energy Action Plan and make sure that those actions in the plan are properly executed. Number two, he's, in terms of the powers that he has now, he is supposed to determine the amount of new generation capacity that the country needs to build and the mix of the new generation capacity. And number three, very broadly, is expected to end load shedding, or at least assist in ending load shedding. So those are the three functions that we understand currently are the things that he's supposed to do. Now the question is, what powers does he need in order to be able to perform those functions and fulfill his obligations in terms of those requirements?
Yeah.
So regarding the powers that he has now and whether or not they are sufficient for him to be able to fulfill his mandate, my view is that they are not. Okay, so let's take, for instance, the powers that he has now. The powers that he has now essentially relate to the powers contained in the Electricity Regulation Act, Section 34, subsection 1. That's essentially the powers that he has. Those powers basically relate to determining the amount of generation that the country needs and what the mix of that generation will be in terms of energy sources. Those are the powers, but the implementation thereof, okay, determining, the procurement processes, et cetera, that still rests with the Minister of Minerals and Energy. So he can't really fully, or let me say, the powers that he has at the moment don't empower him fully to be able to fulfill his mandate.
So, for example,
there is the link.
For example,
so there was a long way of answering your question.
No, I understand.
The
current challenges, for example, that we are talking about now, delays at returning Quebec Unit 1 into the grid. Is that something that he would have done something about, for example, had he had a little bit more powers that are currently residing with the Public Enterprises Minister, say, for example?
No, because that whole project, it's basically an engineering project, and it's about executing that project properly, having the right project management systems in place. I don't think the minister would have been able to speed up that process in any way. There were problems there with the principal contractor, who is Framatome, and Framatome is a French contractor that does a lot of work in the nuclear sector, and it works a lot with the French energy utility. So those are contractual issues at an operational level. Those delays had to do with basically project execution. So the minister wouldn't have been able to change that.
What he would probably be able to change, though, is who is at the helm of Eskom to be able to deal with those operational issues. So had he had a little bit more power, for example, a CEO could have been appointed by now.
Yeah, possibly. Possibly. You know, we have a big leadership problem here, Thabo. You know, the previous CEO resigned about a year ago, okay? And we still don't have a CEO of Eskom. And this is just unacceptable given the fact that Eskom is an organization in crisis, okay? And then what the president then did is that he appointed the new minister. And firstly, there was a delay in appointing the minister. And when he did appoint the minister, he appointed him without any powers. Then months later, I think about 5 months after his appointment, he then grants him the powers. Now it turns out that those powers are insufficient for him to fulfill his job. And now, almost a year later, we've got to give him more powers. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The other leadership problem in this whole thing is that Eskom has this triad of ministers or ministries that it has to report to now. Okay, DMRE, DPE, and the new Ministry of Electricity. It's just it's crazy. It's a dog's breakfast. We need one single point of accountability. And in my view, what we should do is firstly, DPE needs to be dissolved. That ministry is not needed. It introduces confusion into the whole equation. And not just with Eskom, with other parastatals as well. If you take Transnet, for instance, Transnet is in transport, okay? So it has, again, a dual reporting function or responsibility to DPE and to the Ministry of Transport. And that just causes unnecessary problems. DPE needs to be closed down. So if you did that, then you would have Eskom reporting to DMRE. And in my view, what should happen is that instead of trying to split the energy responsibilities between the Ministry of Electricity and the Ministry of Energy, rather split DMRE and go back to what we've had before, a Ministry of Minerals Resources and a full Ministry of Energy. And then Eskom would have one point of accountability, which would be the Ministry of Energy.
Mthunzi Luthuli, I appreciate
it's
your time.
Also, by the way,
yes.
It's also, by the way, wrong to think of electricity as just one energy carrier. There are many energy carriers. You know, there's liquid fuels, there's gas, there's oil, etc. And so, and making decisions, isolated decisions on electricity, in the exclusion of the other energy carriers is also a mistake in itself. So you do need to keep electricity decisions within the broader ambit of energy decisions.
Mthunzi Luthuli, I appreciate your time. Let's leave it there for tonight. The energy expert there discussing the powers of the electricity minister.